My brother and his wife Laura, who is 7 months pregnant, are staying with us for a week or so since he's interviewing for jobs in the city my family and I are in. My kids love having their aunt and uncle around and everything's been great. Yesterday, Laura went out and came back with groceries. I thanked her but told her that we don't expect them to do this, the kitchen is stocked and that we're just enjoying having them. She said that she wanted to and that most were cravings she's been having. I started helping her unload the bags and noticed that a lot of snacks were with peanuts. Cookies, crackers, PB, even some sort of cake fusion. It all made me uneasy because she knows my oldest son, 8M, is extremely allergic. I don't keep anything of the kind in our home because we've had an incident when he was younger where we almost lost him. I didn't want to be rude but I told her that I'm not comfortable with having the stuff in the house. She told me that she would be careful, that she wouldn't eat it around him or his siblings and that she'd clean up after herself, that she was having intense cravings and needed them. Look, I've had 4 kids and kind of get where she's coming from, although I never had to have something, but every woman is different. I made sure my son knew not to touch any of it and to leave her alone when she's eating them. That was that. Today, I woke up early to make breakfast and open the fridge only to be greeted by strawberries dipped in PB left out without a container to chill. The PB jar wasn't sealed properly next to them and there were sandwiches on a plate because she likes the bread cold and soggy. I was pissed. I've read enough about airborne contamination to know that you can't really determine it, but I wasn't risking it. I grabbed a bag and started throwing everything in it. Our groceries, hers, I did, take care. I was going to take the bag, drive to a shelter and let them know the situation. Laura woke up while I was on my rampage, came down and asked all upset what I was doing. I was snippy with her and didn't try to hide it. We got in an argument with her defensively saying that I can't do this, that the baby needs it and that it's cruel to put a pregnant woman through unsatisfied cravings. I told her bluntly that I don't give a single fuck, if she can't keep to her word then I won't either and that she'll live without her craving. My son can't say the same with his allergy. She went back upstairs, packed her bag and came back down, grabbed the bag of food and left in a huff. My brother was at his interview and called me half an hour later to ask me what happened. He was upset with his wife but also with me because nothing happened and at the end of the day, my son is fine. I told my husband when he came back from work and he's completely on my side. Update 1. She hadn't twisted anything, told them the full honest story and my mother was livid. She called me panting like she ran a marathon after she berated Laura to make sure my son is okay, so I can only imagine the riot act she read her. Apparently, even my stepdad gave Laura one of his disapproving frowns. My brother came back in the evening to get his stuff since Laura had only packed hers for some reason. He did apologize for what she did, said that he'll have a chat with her once she's calmed down. She's been inconsolable. He told me that she's been crying since she left my mom's house and that she now feels unwelcome and unloved in our family and he blames me for it. My husband butted in and told him that it's enough. That whatever she's feeling doesn't cover half of what we felt and that she needs to get over herself, that I've been scrubbing the house from top to bottom for hours because of her actions. I did get panicky and went on to deep clean the whole house, especially the kitchen, but anyway, my brother left after he said that there's no leveling with us when we're being this stubborn. Now that I've had time to get out of the state I was in, I do feel bad that she's distressed and feels unwelcome in our family. That was never my goal. I've been debating sending her an apology, not for my actions because I stand by them but for the way I went about it. I shouldn't have allowed the stuff in our house in the first place and could have been calmer about it after I opened the fridge. Update 2. So after my mom berated Laura and my brother yelled at my husband and I took the advice I was given and sent them a long text which ended up being a bit of a ramble about everything, how fucked the situation is, how we're disgusted by their stance and how we'll be going LC until we feel ready to be around them again. That was the day after my brother packed his bags and left. I was left on read and I thought that was that until a few days ago when I got a call from Laura. I thought about not answering it but curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, Laura tried to make awkward small talk but I think she sensed I wasn't in the mood and got right to it. She apologized about her behavior, said she had no excuse other than her hormones and we ended up having a long chat about everything. By the end of it, I actually felt better and like we could get past it and work on our relationship. She also mentioned that she would still like for my family and I to come to her birthday dinner. It wasn't going to happen in a restaurant anymore. I guess the hotel stay ended up costing them a lot as some of you predicted, and that it was going to be at their house instead. I told her that I'll talk with my husband and get back to her. I also got a text from my brother apologizing and saying he was just trying to protect and stand by his wife. It was too soon to start mending things as my husband pointed out, but he left the choice up to me and I honestly believed her apology because she had never acted like that before and she seemed actually ashamed of herself. Anyway, my sister, who was also apologized to BC, she also tore her a new one, and parents, also got an apology, were also invited but my sister's kids wanted a cousin's sleepover instead of going with us, so after talking it over with my sister, we agreed for them to have one at my house. My babysitters of a year are my next door neighbors. They're sweet and responsible 16-year-old twins who live with their single mom. They usually team up and tackle on my kids on date nights. There's a reason I'm mentioning this. With my sisters added 2 kids to the mix, I asked their mom if she was free to join their duo and she agreed. So I called Laura and told her that Richard and I are coming. When we got to their house, Laura greeted my husband and I at the door. We handed her the gift and went in, but she seemed puzzled that we didn't have a trail of kids with us, so I told her that it's just us adults tonight. Same thing happened when my sister and her husband walked in. Dinner was awkward. No matter how we tried to lighten up the mood, and the conversation was stilted at best, but I thought it was at least a step forward. Laura asked this time about why the kids were not with us, that she had made special food for them. I never mentioned the kids when I got back to her, just my husband and I, but I felt like it was my fault that I didn't clarify, and so I apologized for it and thanked her for thinking of them. My sister chimed in that her kids and mine were having a cousin's sleepover tonight and how she was excited about our soon-to-be nephew to join them when he's here and older. Laura looked at her with a smile and said, "Yeah, I'm sure he'll be best friends with his cousins, as in my kids, and his step-cousins, as in my sisters." This pissed me off because we don't use step anything with the kids, but I bit my tongue. For context, my sister is technically my stepsister. I know I use stepdad in my first post. I usually call him by his first name. I consider him a parental figure since he raised me since I was 10, but I had a dad and the title will always be his. My sister gave her a hurt look, but it was my brother who nudged his wife with a "What are you doing?" look. A few minutes went by again with eating and light convo before Laura asked again about our kids, mainly who was watching them since all 4 parents are here. I told her that my neighbor and her daughters are babysitting, to which she laughed at and joked about how incompetent the girls and their mom must be to need all 3 of them to wrangle the kids. Also, for context, I have 4 kids. I'm biased and like to think they're well behaved, but they're sometimes too much for one person to handle, even me, and I'm the one that brought them into this world. Add my sister's 2 kids and it's a lot for 2 teenage girls to handle even for just a few hours. We left at 7, it said we'll be back at 11. It has absolutely nothing to do with the girls whom my kids adore or their mom, who is as kind as they come. Before I could retort anything, my mom stepped in with one of her smiles and told Laura that it's so kind of her to offer her own competence and watch the kids next time. That shut her up real fast. After that, dinner was even more awkward until we cleared the table and Laura brought out dessert while my brother got the cake from the fridge. Here's where I lost the last of my remaining brain cells. I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I saw my husband carrying my bag and trying to usher me out of the front door to leave. He looked pissed and I was beyond confused and obviously resisted because yes, the dinner is a train wreck, but let me at least say goodbye and give a lame excuse for our departure. When my husband tried to literally carry me out, I knew something was wrong, and after a couple of tries, I darted past him back to the dining room. Laura's now ready dessert table consisted of PB cake pops, PB pie, PB cookies, PB brownies, and top it all off, a PB birthday cake that my brother brought in and was sniffing it with a horrified look. Laura then gave me a big smile and said loudly to my family I thought I should at least get to have my cravings on my birthday. Get your fill before she throws these out too. I honestly thought for a second that my sister was going to tackle her, and I wasn't that far behind her because all I could think about was the fact that she thought my kids were coming and she planned this accordingly. I felt so guilty for allowing the stuff in our house the last time, and if my sister's kids hadn't wanted the sleepover, I was going to walk my son into danger a second time. I lost my shit. Without thinking about my actions, I grabbed Laura's head, forced her talk towards my brother, who was I think too shocked to react, and slammed her head straight into the cake. I held it down as long as I could while she flailed and told her I hope she chokes on her cravings before I let her go. I honestly wanted to go for the pie too, but I had embarrassed myself enough by acting like that in the first place, so I told my brother that I'm done with both him and his wife, and if they try to contact me or my family again, I'm filing for a protective order. Then I let my husband lead me out. My sister was cackling as she followed us with her husband, but our parents stayed back. I heard Laura screaming profanities after us, but my stepdad raised his voice, which shut her up. I got a lot of jokes about his frown on my first post, but the man is as stoic as they come. Him showing any emotion is a big deal. I remember that his frown alone growing up was enough to literally stop my sister and I in our tracks. We knew if he gave us one that we messed up. I haven't asked my mom what happened after we left because I can't handle any more heartache from my brother or his actions. I don't think this was the update anyone wanted, least of all me, but I'm completely done with the both of them. Even though my brother looked like he had no idea, the stuff was in his house, happening under his damn roof. I'm sad I won't be in my nephew's life and my kids won't get to know the new cousin they've been waiting for, but I'd rather cry over that than over my son's life. I don't expect anyone to be kind in the comments. I'm 32, I shouldn't have been so naive, and I know I shouldn't have reacted like that, and I'm going to be dealing with that with my therapist along with the guilt I'm feeling, but please take it easy on me, I'm still shaken up. Now on to second story. Discovered my wife lied about blocking an abusive ex, maintaining secret contact, and now I'm asking for a divorce tonight. I recently married my longtime GF, 8 years, who I'll call Amy. Important context. While we have been together that whole time, the first 5 years were not exclusive, did not live together, and for 2 years were 1,200 miles apart, though we made regular visits. When she and I first met, we were both married but in open relationships. My wife, myself and Amy's husband were required to travel for extremely long periods of time, sometimes years, with minimal opportunities to return home, security contractors. Amy is an ER nurse. 3 months before she and I met, while her husband was home on a 6-month break, she met a local cop and started a relationship with him. We'll call him Chris. He introduced her to some pretty extreme S&M and BDSM, which she found she deeply enjoyed. Unfortunately, it rapidly escalated past anything even remotely healthy, and became abusive. This rapidly began to destroy her marriage and family, and despite her husband giving her an ultimatum, she persisted. I was unaware of the abusive, obsessive nature of her relationship with Chris until Amy's husband told me. I had noticed that Amy was becoming increasingly erratic, but had no explanation. I broke it off with Amy. A month later she reached out saying she had realized how toxic the relationship was, that she had broken up with Chris, blocked him, and if I was interested would like to start seeing me again. I verified with her husband, then started sleeping with her again. This was still very much a booty call level of relationship at this point. From that point on, over the next 8 years, we would become closer and closer and eventually marry. However, about 4 years ago she mentions that he had reached out to her over some pictures she posted, unrelated, that they had a good conversation where he asked why she had broken it off with him, and they had both reached some closure. I noted that while I was glad for her, how could he have reached her if she blocked him? Her reply was that while she blocked his number she had forgotten to block him on IG. I let it go. A couple years ago in a conversation with her friend, I find out that during a medical emergency some years back, but after she supposedly blocked him, that it had actually been Chris that she called to take her into the ER and stay, not this friend. I confronted Amy. She said that when she told me she had a friend take her she just didn't think to explain who exactly. This has remained a very touchy subject for me, for all the reasons stated. We are also no longer in an open relationship, now that I have stopped traveling, among other reasons. We moved back to the area, in the same town that Chris was an officer in, about 2 years ago. A few months ago, just before we married, she commented that I could be less touchy about Chris now that we are getting married, and after all he had retired and moved to Florida. We are in Midwest. I asked how she knew that, and she stated that she read an article about his retirement. Because he retired as a lieutenant and the first K-9 officer, that was barely possible, but I was unconvinced and asked her point blank if she had been talking to him. She said no, point blank. A week ago, I was reading an article about Belgian Malinois, and saw an article about Chris attending the retirement ceremony for his former K-9. The ceremony was only 6 months ago, and would mean he was in the area until very recently. So I dug, and I'm good at it. Now I have all the dates, times, houses, etc., for the man. He retired 9 months ago, left for Florida right after the K-9 ceremony. But there is no mention in any article of him moving, and there wouldn't be since he moved well after retiring. So I confronted Amy, and this time she says Chris reached out to her out of the blue via text and they chatted. When asked how that was possible if he was blocked, she said he had a new number. We had a big fight, and I've spent a couple days considering what to do. Right now, I plan to confront her tonight. Even if it is true that she forgot to block him on IG, why did she have a conversation when he reached out? Even if she was confused and called him to go to the ER, why did she hide that from me for years? Even if he texted her, randomly, after years, after he moved to Florida, using a new number, why did she have a conversation and tell him that she now lives in town? My full intention is to ask for a divorce tonight. For those who've asked for more info, her husband and I are still close. Let's call him Dan. He is still working. The more to the story is that I had a really bad day that left me unable to keep traveling. As soon as I was home full time, and more to the point laid up and not earning, my wife divorced me and tried to take the money and the kids. No need for details there, but I wound up with the kids and the money all got burned on attorneys. Amy had always been the one who had to stay home, so she and I started spending a lot of time together doing life things. Dan was glad to have someone he trusted with her and their kids, and despite me being half speed he felt good having someone around to keep her from tangling with the too bad crowd. Including Chris, which should have been a bigger red flag than it was, but I still hadn't come out of that king of the hill mentality. So the change was when I stopped traveling. Amy and I started living together, her husband Dan left permanently, I adopted her kids, and my wife divorced me, lost custody, and kept traveling, though her travels are all stateside. Dan doesn't have, and at this point doesn't want, a romantic relationship with anyone. I'm sure he still has a list for finding relief, but he is allergic to any sort of permanent situation. While he would never be willing to, and I don't want to, have me adopt his kids, they were 14 meters, 10 meters, and 8F when I met them, 18 meters, 14 meters, and 12F when I came home for good, and 22 meters, 18 meters, 16F now. He has given me power of attorney on their behalf and they all call me dad. So, there's that. And yes, I'm sure there are a lot of people who judge all of us for the choices and lifestyle we've made. But we are all human, and the things required of the people called on to do the things that we do lead to a lot of compromises. We make the decisions we do based on the things we know at the moment. Hindsight is only useful when you start looking forward again. Update 1. I had the conversation, I told her I am divorcing her, it went as badly as expected. She and Chris have not been physical, but we got to the heart of the reason she has been in touch with him. I am exhausted, but feel like I have some clarity of mind and purpose I have lacked for quite some time. I'll probably feel more chatty tomorrow, but for now that's what I have. Edit, more coherent update now that I've slept on it. In another reply in the thread below I have my take on what she told me, and her reasons, and I won't repeat it all. And yes, this is my opinion and what I choose to put on here, and I'm sure if she were on here she would have some reason to explain how none of it is her fault. Thinking about it, the pattern is clear. She even said as much herself, but we don't always hear what we don't want to hear. All of her relationships have come through our professional community in some capacity or another. She is attracted to the men in it, and the lifestyle, or at least this version of it. She married Dan because he's exciting and dangerous, and mostly absent. She got to have the money, the kids, an exciting husband, near total independence because he was only home maybe 3 or 4 weeks a year, and because of the circumstances she could also sleep around freely, so did Dan, to be clear. This was fine until Dan spent an extended period of time at home. There was a lot said there about how unfair, unreasonable it is when one of us comes back home with zero idea of how things work, or why, and start acting as if our opinion of what home life should or should not look like needs to be followed. I get that, actually. Long story short, she was never and is not now interested in a normal marriage. She wants and enjoys the lifestyle she had, first with Dan and then with me. It ended with Dan when he came home and tried to play house. It ended with me when I came home long term and tried to do the same thing. For that matter, that's what ended my marriage with my first wife, me coming home and acting like I own the place rather than an occasional visitor. Amy did enjoy the more normal life with me but also wants the old excitement. She wants to have her cake and eat it too. So she reached back out to Chris because she did like what they did until Chris went too far and Dan was about to leave home again, leaving her alone with Chris around. Bonus excitement for her at the time because she got to literally watch me confront Chris at our home and send him away. But things have changed since then, and the new circumstances mean she can hook up with Chris and do much more extreme things than she does with me while also having me at the house to keep Chris in check. Only catch is that it's no longer on the up and up, so she and Chris would have to sneak around. Maybe that made it more exciting? Almost works, but I clue in and realize they are in contact and unravel the whole thing before they have an opportunity to act on it. More, Chris definitely scratches a sexual itch than Dan and I did, do not. Dan and I are similar in that we can and do enjoy some level of BDSM, etc., but as it escalates it becomes much too similar to work things we don't want within a million miles of our homes. I'm happy to put the handcuffs on you and hold you down, but once we get to heavy impact play, cutting, or God help me CNC, the level of nope is so high it could put me off for weeks. So yeah, Chris is a better lover than I am in that regard. More, alcoholism. I know my short reply last night while tired was pretty ugly. Yes, there is truth there, but no, it isn't that simple. I was quoting her, but a lot of what she said was intended to be hurtful. I appreciate the kind questions and comments. I have tried medical marijuana, but it's a terrible fit for me. It made me physically less coordinated, but also made me feel more alert. The combination takes me from a level of hypervigilance that already requires medication, and that I am slowly improving with CBT, to flat-out dangerous paranoia. So, hard pass. For whatever reason, I have little reaction to local anesthetics, so it's difficult to treat the pain locally. The solution has been stronger meds like opiates, but since I don't have a death wish nor any desire to inflict a drug-addicted dad on my children, I left those behind completely at the very first opportunity. So now I take a crap ton of ibuprofen, of course, right? Lidocaine patches, not particularly effective but better than nothing, biofreeze, weekly massage therapy, and yes, more nights than not I wind up drinking at bedtime in order to get to sleep.